Let's say there's a company that has a logo that has a certain color to it. And we're going to talk a little bit about colors, the color picker, the Pantone Matching System, and making color tones look similar to each other. Has anybody heard of the Pantone Matching System before? Pantone is a company that decades and decades ago got tired of the whole system of burnt sienna, vermilion, chartreuse, and who actually knows what those colors are? So they were like, you know what, screw it, let's just number the damn things. And that's what they did. You know, if you're looking at paint, you can get little paint swatches, you can see how it looks on the wall and stuff. Pantone basically does the same sort of thing with colors. They studied how the human visual system works and how we perceive colors, and they did all kinds of pioneering work. And then they came up with a bunch of little printed books, and graphic designers will often have them. They'll kind of flip through the books and choose their colors. And when you have the swatch book, you know that what this color is will be the same if you give the same Pantone Matching System number to someone else. And Photoshop incorporates that as well. I'm going to call it the color picker here. I'm going to click on the foreground color, and there's the color picker. And it's showing us the colors right now in HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness. Now, this is our hue slider right here. What does hue mean again? Yeah, just whatever the color is. So we've got reds, greens, blues, cyans, magentas, yellows. And if you were to roll this up into a circle, connect the reds there, you would have the color wheel, all the colors around a circle. Basically, they took the color wheel, snapped it at red, stretched it open, and there's all your colors. So you choose your hue this way, up and down the middle bar. Saturation, what does that refer to again?
Intensity of the color.
Yeah, how close to pure the color is. So saturation is the left and right axis on the big square here. So anything down the very left side will always be gray or black or white, some kind of shade of neutral. There'll be no color down the left side there. And the B, or brightness, is your vertical axis, up and down. So the bottom is no brightness, and anything along the bottom line will always be black. And as you go higher, it gets brighter and brighter. If you want the brightest, most saturated version of a color, always go to the top right. If you're trying to get black or white, I mean, ideally just hit D on the keyboard. That'll get you your default colors. But if you need to get pure white from here, always drag a little further out. Like if you try to, I've seen students where they'll try to get black by clicking here. That's not black. Only that pixel right down there is black. So just do a click and a drag right out of the bottom corner, and you'll know that you have pure black. Or out of the top right corner, and you'll know you have the most pure, brightest version of that color. Yes?
Is that a banana?
I was just thinking.
It is a banana. Now, if the client has a specific color, like oftentimes with graphic designers, they'll have, Coke will have their specific red, and IBM will have their specific blue. And if you get that wrong, they're going to be really ticked. So usually they'll have a Pantone color. And to get to your color swatches, which is basically all the different books that Pantone publishes, and they are, just so you know, if you're ever thinking about getting into graphic design, or if you want to get one of these Pantone books so that you can see these colors that people are talking about and see if it actually matches your screen, they're really expensive. And the best part is they have an expiry date. Because over time things, paper turns yellow, things fade. So after a certain number of years, you're supposed to throw them out and buy new ones. But if you click on the color libraries option there, these are all the different color matching books that Photoshop installs by default. And there's other companies as well. They've got all the Pantones, the Toyos, the True Match, the HKSs, the Focal Tones. So let's say for this that the client has said, oh, you know what, our logo, we've changed the color of it. We've gone from that pink to a blue color. And so this is their old logo in that old color. And now they want it to be a Pantone solid uncoated 674U. Well, here's all the libraries we have. And oh, here's the solid uncoated. And 674U. Well, I could flip through all the different swatches here, and if you scroll, there's a bunch of them. Or I could simply type 674, and there it is, 674U. So if you've got a number of Pantone, first off, find the right book. Let's just talk for a second about what this means here. Pantone Solid Uncoated. You'll see there's a process system, there's solid system, there's coated, there's uncoated. It depends what kind of paper stock you're printing on and what sort of printer press you're using. Solid, well, first off, let's talk about process color. We've talked about CMYK before, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It means that if you're printing something in CMYK, it goes through 4 different presses. One will put down the cyan, then the magenta, then the yellow, and then the black, and there's your product out the other side. But there's some colors that can't be reproduced in that CMYK process. They're unreproducible. So in the case of this color here, it's probably not printable in CMYK. It's probably outside the gamut of CMYK. You saw how CMYK had that really tiny, crappy gamut? So a solid color means that there's a fifth press added. So there's the CMYK, and then it'll go through a fifth press. That's called a spot color. So if a company has a specific color for their logo, they'll actually, the press will buy a tub of that ink, they'll put it into the last press, and when it goes through the first four, it'll leave a white gap where that color's supposed to be, and the fifth press will squish that color into the gap. So this means that it's a solid color, not four-color process. Uncoated means that the paper is going to absorb the ink a little bit more than a coated paper would. You notice how like magazines, they have a kind of a glossy sort of look. But then you look through like the Metro Flyer and it's got a matte papery sort of look. And you notice the colors aren't as vibrant in that uncoated paper. So this is the closest reproduction of an uncoated for this specific color here. But what are the RGB values for that? We've got the LAB values, lightness, color channel A and color channel B. But if we pop back to the picker, look at that. It's still got that same color of pink there. It's got our hue, saturation, and brightness. So its hue number 323. Its saturation is 36%, and its brightness is 72%, which correlates to the LEB colors that we saw, which correlates to the RGB values of 184, 117, and 158, and a CMYK of 18%, 65%, 11%, and 0. Now this might suggest that this is CMYK reproducible, right? If you were to, if they wanted to save some money and they didn't want to do a spot color, because spot colors cost extra money because it's like a fifth run through a press, which means it's a fifth plate and everything, they could say, well, you know, there's a CMYK value, just use that. That's as close as it can get. And this is telling us right now that, well, look at this. This is actually unreproducible in CMYK. If I were to click on that icon there, it'll take us to the closest reproducible CMYK color. So this is actually what you could end up with in CMYK. It's not quite the same. It's got a whole lot more magenta in it. But it would be reproducible using a four-color process. You wouldn't have to go to a solid color there. Now, how could we get that logo to these numbers? Same process we used last week. Let's give that a try. Now, don't worry about the color picker there. I actually wrote down the RGB values right over here, 184, 117, and 158. And what was the process again for changing the color of something? Well, first off, we needed to know what the color was. So if we called up our info panel, and I remember I ripped this out because we couldn't do info and panel at the same time, and I hover over top, it's currently 169, 218, 231. Now we know that if we move our cursor off of this, we'll lose that readout. How did we get a permanent readout of that color? We used a color sampler, which hides out with the eyedropper. Color sampler tool, and we went and we stuck a little sampler on top of it, which gives us a constant readout down here. And then we called up an adjustment layer. Levels or curves, either one would do. If you use the levels, you go to this little middle slider here. If you use the curves, you would grab the middle of that 45-degree line. And we look at the problems. We're trying to get to 184 in the red channel, and we've currently got 169. Well, let's pop to the red there. Let's pull this around until we get our 184. The green channel, we needed 117. And again, because of those rounding errors, remember when you grab that middle bead on the elastic string, you pull it a certain number. The farther out you get towards the edge, the less you're able to control where those ones go. You pull this one like a whole lot. This one will move less. I think 116 is the closest we're going to get. And for the blue, we're looking for a 158. There we go. I have changed the color of the logo. Except, uh-oh, what happened to the rest of the image? What do we do about that? Option click on this little line between the two layers. Or, easiest thing right now, because we're in the properties panel and it's an adjustment layer, we have this little icon right here. There's a bunch of ways we can make clipping groups. Let's just clip that down. And there's that pink color. And we know that numerically, because we got it from that Pantone number, that it should be correct.